Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to this special IUSSP webinar. I am Nico van Imwegen. I'm the Secretary General of the IUSSP, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of the Council of the IUSSP. We are the Worldwide Association of Population Scientists, and if you're not yet a member, you should definitely think of joining us. All of our activities are member-driven. They are proposed by members, they are executed by members. Take, for instance, our scientific panel, of which we have 15. They cover the whole field of population studies. And also for early career colleagues, IUSSP has much to offer. Today's event is special. We are celebrating the 2025 IUSSP Early Career Awards. This is the second edition of these awards, which started in 2023. The awards acknowledge, and there are 5 of them, by the way, acknowledge outstanding contributions to our discipline by early career colleagues. And we at IUSSP are very proud that the awards are offered in collaboration with the population associations, the Union of African Population Studies, the Asian Population Association, the European Association for Population Studies, the Latin American Population Association, and the Population Association of America. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to the chair of the international jury for the IUSSP Early Career Awards, the president of IUSSP, Shireen Jijiboy. Shireen, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome. I'm Shireen Jijiboy, the current president of the IUSSP, and I'll be chairing this session. I'm really delighted, like Nico, that we're celebrating the second Early Career Researcher Awards today to acknowledge these young, outstanding scientists whose work has already made a mark in our field. We at IUSSP recognize that early career scholars from each region of the world may not be as commonly acknowledged as more established scientists, although the work they do contributes as much, sometimes maybe more, and are more up to date than many established scientists. And so we're very proud to have this opportunity to celebrate their achievements. We received a lot of excellent applications, and so making a decision was particularly difficult. So I congratulate our 2025 awardees for making it through this rigorous jury process. As Nico said, this is a unique collaborative effort, bringing together IUSSP and the regional associations. And so I must acknowledge the hard work and long deliberations put in by the juries. They had a very tough task, which they have accomplished brilliantly, as you'll see. And finally, I must thank the early career scientists for their interest in our initiative and the contributions that they have made to the field. We really have, I've had an opportunity to glance at the presentations you're going to hear. We have a feast of diverse presentations, and I won't stand between you and the awardees anymore. Now, each awardee will be introduced by a jury member and will make a short presentation describing her or his work and journey. So thank you very much. Look forward to the main part of the ceremony. So let me turn it over to Jalal. Jalal?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Nico and Shireen, for the kind introduction. I'm Jalal Abbasi, ISSP Council member, and it's a real pleasure for me to introduce Dr. Luca Maria Pesando as the 2025 Early Career Awardee for the Asia Pacific region. Dr. Pesando received his BA in economics from Bocconi University, followed by an MA and PhD in demography and sociology from the University of Pennsylvania. After completing his doctorate in 2018, He stayed on at Penn as a postdoctoral fellow and research affiliate before moving to McGill University's Center on Population Dynamics in Canada. He is now an associate professor of social research and public policy at New York University in Abu Dhabi. Dr. Pesando's interdisciplinary background spans demography, economics, sociology, international development, education, global health, computational social science, and public policy. His notable work on global family change investigates how and whether families are transforming across more than 80 low and middle income countries. He has made outstanding contributions to the discipline of demography through his innovative and high impact publications, teaching, and active academic services. On the strength of this impressive record, the selection panel has unanimously recommended Dr. Pesando for the IUSSP Early Career Award. Thank you, Luca, for your contributions to our field, and congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thanks, Jalal, for the very kind words. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with all of you, and especially to be in the company of such wonderful awardees today. So this is a 10-minute presentation which sort of blends different aspects of what I've accomplished so far and where I would like to go next. As Jalal sort of mentioned already, I'll try to skip a bit about my academic journey. I'll just mention that I have a background in economics and social sciences. Then I stopped for a little bit. I worked for a couple of years in policy, in public policy, mostly in Africa. Through JPAL, Innovation for Poverty Action, the OECD Development Center, and I really thought that experience was instrumental for me to decide to go on getting a PhD, which I got in 2018 at Penn, and then I moved to the Department of Sociology at McGill, and in 2022 I moved across the world to NYU Abu Dhabi. So a bit about my research. My research focuses on changes in family forms and structures around the world, particularly in low and middle income countries. I'm very much interested in how families and schools interact with each other to shape educational and gender inequalities. And I try to adopt both a within and a cross-generational perspective. And I'm also heavily interested in public policies, in the role that public policies play in narrowing inequalities and may compensate for different layers of family disadvantage. A few of the themes that emerged most prominently in my work relate to the cross-national focus, primarily on low and middle income countries with a very big focus on sub-Saharan Africa. I use social and digital data, by which I mean surveys, both primary and secondary surveys. And I think I was drew to demography by my passion for big picture descriptive research. So a bit about myself. I always get the question, how did you get there? How did you get interested in sub-Saharan Africa? And I think the answer is family, as it always is. I study families because of sort of family origin. My dad was a surgeon, and he established an eye hospital in Kenya. And we used to go with him every summer since I was young. Here I was, I think, 11 years old. And that's where I really started observing like household dynamics. We were staying in families in Kenya. So observing household dynamics there. And I think that really shaped my interest towards understanding family dynamics in low and middle income countries, primarily in Africa. So my work is, I would say, heavily interdisciplinary, primarily centered in demography, but I draw a lot on economics, on sociology, computational social science, education, global health, international development, and public policy. A few words about my past research. As Jalal mentioned, my dissertation was on family, specifically on global changes in families. My dissertation was titled 3 Essays on Family, Gender, and Educational Change across low and middle income countries. And I'll just mention a few of the research questions I have investigated, but mostly how are families changing around the world? How does educational expansion shape couple formation? How are youth transitioning into adulthood in low and middle income countries? How much variation exists in family change, and how much cluster regionally these family changes are. My current research draws upon my past research, but I would say it intersects more heavily with two other massive global social transformation. One is schooling and educational change, and the other is technological change, or the digital revolution. And given that my award is for the Asian Pacific region, I decided for this presentation to focus on a few of the studies that I'm currently conducting now. So they're not published, but they're focused on Asia, primarily focused on South Asia and India specifically. So the first study deals with the interrelationship between educational change and family change. And here we're trying to investigate what can explain the increase in intercaste marriages that we are observing in India, which you see here on the left-hand side. Intercaste marriages are not very common, but they have increased quite significantly across marriage cohorts. And we try to explore the question of whether being exposed to massive schooling expansion when you are young, when you are a child, may affect the likelihood that you yourself enter into an intercaste marriage when you are an adult. And just a snapshot of the results, but what we find here is that these massive school expansions seem to have a strong effect on your likelihood of entering an intercaste marriage, and this effect is driven by young ages, primarily by primary school ages. The second piece of work instead relates the topics of family change and technological change, and it's again focused on India. This is on a survey that we conducted ourselves, and the question is very simple, like, is regular internet use, does exposure to regular internet use shape your family ideals and makes it more modern somehow? And we do observe a bit of that. Two findings that we get from this study. The first one is that what really matters for women is independent internet use. So accessing internet through a personal device rather than through a shared device. And the second finding that we obtain is that this really holds both correlationally, but also using sort of more quasi-experimental techniques, using sort of geospatial variation in bit rates, download speed. And we find that this effect size can be considered close to 0.19, where the outcome here is a modernity index. So being exposed to internet daily and regularly seems to be shaping women's attitudes towards modern families quite importantly. And the last one is a very recent one. What we're doing here, we're scraping the Times of India. And specifically, we're scraping matrimonial columns. So we're asking the question, what are people looking for when they write these matrimonial ads? What are some characteristics of partners that people are increasingly interested in? Now, I'm just reporting here a snapshot that relates to men and women's physical appearance. And one finding that we have so far is that there has really been an important shift from men's physical attributes to women's physical attributes over time. And you see here, women's physical attributes are the yellow ones, while men's physical attributes are the red ones. So we do also this for caste, for religion, for ethnicity, to try to see what kind of features people are interested in partners right now through the matrimonial columns. Now, a few words about what I'm finding most exciting at this stage of my life. So the first one, I'm located in the Gulf, which is, from a demographic standpoint, a very interesting part of the world. So I'm really trying to strengthen the demographic infrastructure in this part of the world. I'm trying to build a demographic center, which is called Center for Demographic Studies. This is what the acronym stands for, with the idea of bridging Eastern Europe with Southeast Asia and North Africa. And then I'm increasingly interested in parenting, both from a personal standpoint and from a scholarly standpoint. I'm studying parenting norms in the UAE, and I'm also trying to see how parenting norms may be persistent and durable across different contexts, both in the global north and in the global south. I finally went back to doing fieldwork, which is something I'm really excited about. Working in Rwanda to try to establish what we label a human development and demography surveillance site, which we will then use to test a series of interventions in this rural part of Rwanda. And in all of these efforts, I'm really trying to embrace mixed methods much more than I used to do in the past, to try to do some qualitative research and complement quantitative findings. Now, another big endeavor that I'm engaged in and I'm interested in is to reflect on the status of demography. And I think this is an important aspect for the IUSSP and potentially for us as early career scholars. It would be really nice to get together and sort of reflect even further about where demography is heading, and even think about sort of innovations in teaching that may match the innovations that we have been observing in data, in theories, and so on and so forth. I think this would be wonderful to think about with other fellow awardees. I also try as much as possible to keep one foot into policy making. So outside of academia, I've been doing some work with the Inter-American Development Bank, with OECD Development Center, with UNICEF. And I really find that that is useful also for my academic work. It helps me to redirect some of my efforts towards research questions that I find more impactful. And I hope to continue doing that. And lastly, I'm very concerned about public outreach. We talk extensively about the disconnect between social science and public policy. So the little that I can do is to try to make my findings appealing and applicable to broader audiences. So this is an article that I published in the Financial Times about fertility decline in the UAE. This is a newspaper from Italy related to some work that we did on COVID. So just to mention that I really try my best to make my findings appealing and convey them in lay terms to broader audiences. Okay, I'll just close by acknowledging most of the institutions that supported my journey so far, starting from Bocconi, where I got my economics degree and where sort of I still have one of my main academic fathers who introduced me to demography, which is Francesco Billari. Then I'd like to thank Penn Demography, my former colleagues at McGill, my current colleagues at NYU Abu Dhabi, my dean, Paula England, who is always very supportive of my endeavors, and she's supporting my idea of establishing a center here, the Jacobs Foundation, lots of co-authors that I couldn't mention, but are really important, especially at my stage right now, and the IUSSP for this award. I think I'm 10 seconds above the limit, so I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. You're really a diverse range of accomplishments is very impressive. Of course, I have a lot of interest that you've expressed in India, in child marriage, and so I look forward to much more interaction with you. Let's move to our second speaker. So Anne, would you introduce Monica?
Thanks, Shireen. I'm Anne Moore, the North American IUSSP Council member, and it's my pleasure to introduce Monica. Monica Alexander is an associate professor in statistical sciences and sociology at the University of Toronto. Since she received her PhD in demography from the University of California, Berkeley in 2018, she has been crafting a research career remarkable for how uniquely diverse and interdisciplinary it is, with formal demography at its core. Monica is already recognized as a leader in the field of statistical and computational demography. She has worked extensively with UN organizations such as the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and UNHCR, as well as the Human Mortality Database, to improve statistical estimation to track progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Her work on estimating neonatal mortality worldwide using Bayesian methods has been used to produce official UN estimates since 2015, and a companion paper, which came out in 2019 on trends and projections, has been cited more than 784 times. She has also led some of the first research to show the utility of social media data to estimate migration patterns. Additionally, work led by Monica was the first to highlight the rapidly increasing levels of opioid mortality in the Black population in the United States. Monica is not only an active scholar, but also educator. She has developed training material in demography, applied statistics, Bayesian statistics, and reproducible research, even making these materials available on her website. She's a member of the IUSSP's panel on digital demography, co-organizes the Formal Demography Working Group and Our Ladies Toronto, and runs a Bayesian demography lab at U of T. Monica is passionate about increasing the representation and visibility of women in STEM, and to that end, maintains a list of women scholars in demography. Monica is currently on sabbatical at Nuffield College, Oxford. She has a fun website where, in addition to her list of women scholars in demography, she lists working papers where there's not so much work happening, something we can all relate to. And she even features 1 or 2 monthly music playlists there. Monica, we are honored to be able to give you the IUSSP North American Early Career Award.
Thank you very much, Anne. That was a really generous introduction. I'm going to share my slides, or try to at least. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, no, thanks very much. It's a real honor to get this award. And like Luca said, it's just it's sort of a real honor to get the award with such a great group of scholars as well. I will flag before I forget that Anne mentioned the formal demography working group. We have a meeting on Friday. So if you're interested in coming, Hampton Gaddy is going to talk about excess mortality methods. So feel free to sign up. So today I'll just briefly talk about, I guess, give an introduction to my research and then specifically focus on a recent project on maternal causes of death. Just trying to get rid of the Zoom bit, but I can't. That's all right. Okay, so just a bit of background about myself. I'm a card-carrying demographer, but I also have a background in statistics. I grew up in Hobart, which is the capital city of Tasmania in Australia. So I'm very, very excited for IUSSP this year, being in my home country. I moved to the US to do a Master's of Statistics and a PhD in Demography at Berkeley. And then since 2018, I've been at Toronto, first assistant professor and then associate from last year. And I'm jointly appointed cross between the statistics department and the sociology department. I have, I guess, a bit like Luca, I think it's maybe a common theme with this group, but we're I have a wide range of research interests. But I think a central tenet here is I'm fundamentally interested in demographic questions and particular questions of demographic estimation in contexts where the populations that we're interested in or the outcomes that we're interested in are hard to measure. And it's a very common problem in sort of demographic and health research that often questions that we asked, measurement is hard, data collection is hard. And as we all know, the amount of data that we have on different populations and the quality of that data varies substantially across the world. And this isn't random, and it's sort of, it's generally the case that we know the least about the most disadvantaged populations, which makes demographic estimation in particular quite challenging at times. So focusing on the example of maternal mortality. So this map shows estimates of the maternal mortality ratio produced by the World Health Organization. So the darker the red color here, the higher the maternal mortality ratio. So you can see that there's huge variation across the world. And in particular, the burden of mortality in sub-Saharan Africa is sort of hundreds of times higher than most high-income countries. Now, if we think about the data that we have to, in order to try and understand these mortality patterns, this map shows the coverage of vital registration systems in terms of collecting information on deaths across the world. So vital registration system data is sort of considered to be one of the best sources of data to study death and causes of death. Here, the darker the blue color, the higher the coverage of the vital registration system. So the more of the actual number of deaths in a country that we're getting information on. So you can see that for most high income countries, we have really good coverage and we're getting sort of high quality data about most deaths. But then again, in sub-Saharan Africa, most countries don't even have a vital registration system. And so in these cases, we have to think about alternative sources of data to study mortality. So things like surveys and things like administrative data, for example. So putting those two things together, we sort of see this idea of a dual burden at the global scale. So in particular, the countries that have sort of the highest burden of mortality are also the ones where we know the least about what's happening. And this is obviously true at the sort of global level. This is a sort of a macro level example, but you can think of this sort of idea of a dual burden at many different sort of geographic scales. So it happens subnationally in terms of differences in resources and policies across states and provinces, for example. It happens at the city level You can think about, trying to collect survey data on housing or financial need, for example. It's going to be much easier to collect information on people who have stable housing compared to those who don't. So this is sort of an idea that sort of permeates across the whole of the social sciences, and something that is sort of central to doing good demographic estimation. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm just going to talk about a specific project that has a couple of recent publications. Here we were working with the World Health Organization to estimate the main causes of maternal death. So this project was motivated by monitoring one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Goal 3.1, is to reduce the overall maternal mortality ratio to less than 70 deaths per 100,000 live births by the year 2030. And so while maternal mortality is in general declining across the world, that's not the case for a lot of countries, actually. And there's been noticeable recent sort of slowdowns in progress in mortality improvement. So there's sort of a slowdown in the progress, but also these huge inequalities across countries, as we saw from the maps earlier, in both the level of maternal mortality, but also the trends. So understanding the main reasons why women are dying during pregnancy and childbirth is really important in trying to understand these differences across populations, and also in terms of thinking about better resource allocation and improving health policy. So in this project, we were looking at 7 main causes of maternal death. So deaths due to abortion, embolism, hemorrhaging, hypertension, sepsis, other direct causes, and also indirect causes. So we were interested in estimating the sort of fraction of maternal deaths due to these 7 causes for all countries and regions over an 11-year period. And so this project was sort of 2 pieces. So the first piece, working with the WHO and other groups, we did a large-scale systematic review, trying to collect as much information as possible on the causes of maternal death. So this was sort of collating information from vital registration systems, from surveys, from admin, and other sort of literature reviews across multiple different languages. And then the second piece of this, which I worked on with 2 of my PhD students here at Toronto, we developed a statistical model to try and take all that information from all these different data sources and combine it into a way of getting reasonable estimates of the causes of maternal death. So there's, as I said, there's a couple of recent publications. The Lancet Global Health paper is on sort of the findings, and then there's a paper in Stat in Medicine which talks about the method. So in interest of time, I won't talk about the method or anything. I just wanted to show you a few key results. So the visualization on the screen shows the cause of death distributions for 8 different regions across the world. It's sort of like the proportion of all maternal deaths due to each of these causes. And then the black line on each of those bars represents the 95% uncertainty that we have around each of those estimates. So you can see that, globally, deaths due to hemorrhage are sort of the biggest cause category in terms of maternal deaths. And then the second most important is deaths due to indirect causes. But you can see that there's huge variation in sort of the cause of death distributions across the world. So while deaths due to hemorrhage are quite important in North Africa, Western Asia, Central and Southern Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, for example, in Europe and North America and Australia and New Zealand, indirect deaths are the sort of leading cause of maternal deaths. And then in other regions such as Latin America and the Caribbean, deaths due to hypertension are also quite high. The other thing I'll draw your attention to is there's not only big variation in the distribution of these causes, but also in the uncertainty that we have around those estimates. So uncertainty is relatively large in low and middle income countries. And again, that reflects the fact that we're dealing with less data about deaths, and also data that's of a lower quality. One final graph that I want to show you is just on the timing of hemorrhage deaths. So this is splitting up those deaths due to hemorrhage into the antenatal, intrapartum period and the postpartum period. So you can see that for most regions across the world, the majority of hemorrhage deaths occur in the postpartum period, so after a woman has given birth, which suggests that they're not getting access to adequate postpartum care. So some key findings. So as I said, deaths due to hemorrhage are the sort of leading cause of maternal death, followed by indirect deaths, but there's this huge variation across the world. Hemorrhage deaths disproportionately affect low and middle income countries. And also the types of indirect deaths that happen across the world vary substantially. So while sort of most indirect deaths in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, are due to HIV and AIDS, in high-income countries, indirect deaths include things like complications from mental health conditions, for example. And then I showed the deaths by timing for hemorrhage deaths, but it's also true for sepsis deaths as well, that the majority of deaths happen in the postpartum period. So just some quick implications, and then I'll finish. So these differences in the distributions really point to persistent inequalities in the access to and quality of healthcare. We need to have an improved commitment to postpartum care. And I'll just finish on, you know, these are estimates from a statistical model, but in the end, nothing beats good quality data. And I think that's a really, really important point to take away. We're in this era of shutting down of data collection and restriction of data access. And I think as demographers, it's really important for us to keep advocating for high quality data and continued data collection. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Monica, for a most fascinating presentation. Sorry to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I could talk all day.
Our next speaker, Nkechi, may I ask you to introduce Nurudeen, please?
Yes, certainly. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Nurudeen Alhassan. Indeed, the IUSSP is proud to recognize him as one of the distinguished recipients of the 2025 Early Career Researcher Award. Dr. Nurudeen Alhassan, scientist whose research sits at the intersection of demography, public health, and social policy. His work focuses on understanding how structural and social inequalities shape demographic behavior and outcomes, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, with a strong commitment to data-driven and context-sensitive research, Nurudeen explores themes such as youth transitions, fertility and family planning, as well as gender dynamics. Nurudeen possesses advanced training in demography and population health and has worked on multi-country projects that integrate quantitative and qualitative methods to inform public policy and program development. His scholarly contributions have appeared in peer-reviewed journals and policy briefs, contributing to global conversations on reproductive health, gender equity, and sustainable development. Now, beyond his research, Nurudeen is passionate about capacity building and inclusive scholarship. He engages closely with other early career researchers and collaborates with institutions and communities to ensure that research not only generates knowledge, but also leads to real-world impact. His approach emphasizes ethical engagement, the need for the incorporation of local perspectives, and the translation of evidence into action. Now, he currently serves as a senior research and policy analyst at the African Institute for Development Policy, AFIDEP, where he continues to advance innovative and impactful work at the nexus of population studies and social justice. the IUSSP celebrates Nurudeen Alhassan's outstanding achievements and looks forward to his continued contributions to the field of population studies. Dr. Alhassan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nkechi, for the wonderful words. Thank you so much. Before I start my presentation, I will briefly talk about myself. Like Nkechi said, my name is Nurudeen Alhassan. Maybe I was destined to get into this field of demography because I was born in Navrongo, a few meters away from the Navrongo Health Research Center, which hosts the Navrongo Demographic Surveillance Site. I started my education in Navrongo before proceeding to the University of Ghana for my bachelor's degree. Having completed my bachelor's degree, I proceeded to the Regional Institute for Population Studies at the University of Ghana for my master's and PhD. And I'm very grateful to RIPS for the training and mentorship, which contributed to where I am so far. Having completed with my PhD at RIPS, AFIDEP gave me the opportunity, and AFIDEP is the African Institute for Development Policy. AFIDEP gave me the opportunity to actually work first as a research fellow in the Kenya office before moving to Malawi, where I have been for the past 7 years. I'm also grateful to the IUSSP panel on family planning, fertility, and urban development, which a few years ago gave me an opportunity for a fellowship where I did work that looked at leveraging family planning for accelerating Malawi's socioeconomic development. I'm grateful to that panel chaired by John Cleland and Trudy Harpan for the work and mentorship that has led me and contributed significantly to my development. Now, in preparing for this ceremony and presentation, I draw on one of our recent projects at AFIDEP, which collected data across 4 sub-Saharan African countries. This was a project funded by the Gates Foundation, and we sort of looked at the objective was to explore looking at measurement techniques and how we can improve the collection of quality data for estimating the prevalence of traditional and modern methods, testing different techniques and collecting data over a period of 4 years. The data is now publicly available, and I'm very happy because we are now as a continent in an era where most young researchers do not have access to DHS data because of the USAID suspension. I therefore invite young scholars from Africa and across the world who are attending this ceremony to check out the AFIDEP website for the data that we have collected, which I think is now timely for use. I revisit the relationship between our measures of fertility preference, pregnancy avoidance, desire, and contraceptive use, because we are in an era where we can't take all the traditional measures for granted. In an era where we are focusing on person-centered measures, we need to revisit some of the measures that are central to our research on fertility and contraceptive use. And this topic is particularly important for sub-Saharan Africa because we are still the region with the lowest contraceptive prevalence rate around the world and high fertility. Now, by way of background, fertility preference and pregnancy avoidance are central to research on fertility and contraceptive use. And we are all familiar that measures like unmet need, which has been with our discipline for a long time, demand satisfied, which have been emphasized in the SDGs, all derive from questions around fertility preference. Despite years of research in this area, we have important gaps in our understanding of the relationship between issues of fertility preference and pregnancy avoidance, especially in our region. A lot of the research in the region has focused on fertility preference, and several questions have been used in the DHS. Normally, the 2 standard questions in the DHS and other national surveys on fertility preference has asked women and couple whether they would want to have they would prefer to have another child or they would not. And the follow-up has always been about the timing. What time do they prefer? Do they prefer that child now, later, or they don't want it at all? And the argument in the literature has always been that people who desire no more children or want to postpone their birth would use contraception, consequently leading to a decline in fertility. Now, one of the biggest challenges with our understanding and measures of fertility preference has been the neglect of the emotional dimensions of pregnancy desires. we know that someone could not desire fertility, or they might intend not to have any more children, yet would be happy if they were to get pregnant. Despite these possible linkages, few studies in our region have explored the relationships and measures of pregnancy avoidance desires and contraceptive use. So in this presentation, I draw your attention to the relationship between specific measures of pregnancy avoidance and contraceptive use in 4 countries: the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ghana, Kenya, as well as Nigeria. And like I indicated earlier, this is a project we were recently involved in, a consortium led by AFIDEL in collaboration with the Regional Institute for Population Studies at the University of Ghana. Akina Associates is a consultancy firm in Nigeria. The Medical College at the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. FERI is a population and research institute in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as the University of Kinshasa and the University of Oslo. This project collected data for a period of 3 years in these countries. And the focus was to collect data that would improve our understanding of measures of traditional contraceptive use, as well as the motivations for using traditional and modern methods. In total, we collected data from 13,635 women across the 4 countries. But in this presentation, I would focus my attention on 7,980 women who were in union or out of union but sexually active at the time of the survey. And like I indicated, I invite you all to check the AFIDEP website for the data. Now, I turn my attention to the measures of fertility preference and pregnancy avoidance. Like I indicated earlier, the traditional question that has often been used in the DHS has been on whether women or couple would want to have another child. In collecting this data, we took an advantage of the questionnaire to sort of include 2 experimental questions on measures of fertility avoidance. The first one was how important it is for women to delay or avoid getting pregnant. And the second was, if women were to get pregnant, how they would feel about it. Now I go into the summary findings. If you look at the results from the data for the 4 countries, as expected, contraceptive prevalence was quite high in Kenya and low in DRC and Nigeria. If we proceed to fertility preference, overall, majority of the women across the 4 countries actually indicated that they desired another child, or they desire to have a child. But interestingly, most of them across the 4 countries indicated that it was important for them currently to delay or avoid getting pregnant. And except DRC, majority of women across the 4 countries indicated that they would be unhappy if they were to get pregnant. I ran several multinomial logistic regressions to sort of test the traditional measure, which has focused on preference for a child of not having or being undecided. And then including what the first model included one of the measures, which has to do with how important it is for women to delay or avoid getting pregnant. In this model, we realized that across all 4 countries, the importance of delaying pregnancy was a significant predictor of contraceptive use across all 4 countries. And in Nigeria and DRC, where traditional contraceptive use is quite high, the importance of pregnancy even predicted the use of traditional methods to do that. Now, if you come to the traditional measure of fertility preference, which has often been used in the literature, this measure was significant for 3 countries, that is DRC, Nigeria, and Kenya, not in Ghana. If you run a second model, only including feelings about pregnancy and fertility preference, controlling for all the other variables, including parity, marital status, education, and age, again here you find that feelings about pregnancy is a very significant predictor of contraceptive use across all 4 countries again. In Ghana, again, we find that feelings about pregnancy is not fertility preference was not a significant predictor. Yet, women feeling whether they were happy, they didn't know, were more likely to use contraceptive compared to those who said they would be happy. One interesting observation across all 4 countries is that if you look at the women that said they were undecided about whether they would want another child or not, they were not significantly different from those who said they wanted to have another child. Yet, if you look at those who were unsure or did not know, they were more likely to use contraceptives compared to who were happy to have a child. I then ran a third regression model where I looked at the interaction between feelings about pregnancy and fertility preference. Interestingly, what we find is that happiness about pregnancy interacted and significantly predicted modern contraceptive use across all countries. If you look at this table, there is the women who said they will be unhappy, women who said they will be unhappy, who said they wanted a child but will be unhappy to have pregnancy now, were more likely to use a modern contraceptive compared to those who said they wanted a child but will be happy to have a pregnancy. Now, what are the implications from these results? These results show a very strong relationship between each of our measures of pregnancy avoidance and modern contraceptive use. In the settings where we find traditional method prevalence to be high, particularly DRC and Kenya, you find that most of these women, the pregnancy avoidance measure also significantly associated with a higher likelihood of using traditional methods. So we need to go back to our measures and integrate measures of fertility avoidance directly, and not assume that when women say they do not desire a child or they have a fertility preference to have no more children, automatically it will lead to contraceptive use, since this analysis shows that happiness in the emotional dimensions of pregnancy influences pregnancy even more strongly in some countries than fertility preference. Also, for the policy implications, we need to pay attention to family planning services. For instance, when women are being counseled for pregnancy, it's not sufficient to just assume that those who say they want no more children would automatically take up contraceptives. Counseling services must also focus on issues of emotions, issues of feelings of these women to take into account so that family planning services meet the needs of women and couples. Thank you so much. Zico.
Thank you so much, Nurudeen. Another fascinating presentation, reminding us that we need to expand on our definitions of pregnancy desire and bring in the emotional aspect. So now let me move. Irene, can I give the floor to you to introduce Igor?
Thank you, Shireen. I am so glad and honored to be presenting Dr. Igor Cavallini Johansen. He is a professor in the Department of Demography at the State University of Campina, UNICAMP, and a researcher at the Elsa Berkos Center for the Population Studies, also linked to the UNICAMP. He holds a bachelor degree in social sciences with an emphasis on sociology and political science, where he also obtained a master's degree and a PhD in demography. During his doctorate, he did an internship at the Harvard School of Public Health in the United States. In his early career, Igor has demonstrated exemplary productivity, scholarly rigor, and leadership, establishing himself as a leading researcher in demographic studies and population sciences. Igor works mainly on the following themes: hydropower plants in the Brazilian Amazon, population and environment, social determinants of health, environmental health, urbanization and living conditions, geoprocessing, spatial analysis, infectious and paradisiac diseases. His active engagement in the international academic community is evidenced by his participation as a speaker at numerous conferences worldwide and his membership in the IUSSP for more than 10 years, where he serves as a member of the IUSSP Early Career Task Force. He is currently editor of the journal EAPS, and he was previously co-editor of the Brazilian Journal of Population Studies, PREPEP, between 2021 and 2024. He also coordinated the APEP Population Space and Environment Working Group between 2023 and 2024. Given this remarkable academic output, Dr. Igor Cavallini Johansen was unanimously selected for the IUSSP Early Career Award 2025 in Latin America, and this decision only reflects his outstanding academic achievement, his contributions to the demographic research, and his commitment to the field of population studies. Congratulations, Igor.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Irene. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Igor Cavallini Johansen. I'm a professor at the University of Campinas in Brazil. And I'm going to show you a little bit about my trajectory, my research path. But before anything, I'd like to say that this is such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today in the company of such great people and great researchers. So the introduction of my research journey, I could not start but with this picture that was taken in my first field work in the Brazilian Amazon, more precisely in Santarém municipality. In 2009, I was a social sciences undergrad, and I had the opportunity to participate in this international project bridging UNICAMP and Indiana University. And this was the first-hand experience that sharpened my grasp of social environmental challenges. And here I have colleagues who are today professors all over Brazil. And here am I. Here I am. So the transition from the undergraduate to a researcher, my undergrad at UNICAMP led me to demography, fueled by a fascination with population environment dynamics. I earned my master's and PhD at UNICAMP, followed by 2 postdocs, one at University of São Paulo, and the other one is back to UNICAMP. In terms of contributions, I'd like to highlight a few ones. So I have been working on the theme of urbanization and disease, especially dengue factors. I found that dengue remains a prevalent disease in urban Brazilian areas. It is heavily influenced by demographic shifts, poor sanitation and environmental conditions, such as high temperatures and increased precipitation, which is really important in a context of a climate crisis that we are living right now. And these factors exacerbate the disease spread. I've also been working on the urban-rural mobility drives of malaria transmission in the Brazil's Amazon. I found that urban residents frequent travel to high-risk urban areas, especially by poor, working age men from multi-sited households, fuels malaria importation into town. So just for you to have an idea, 64 to 69 of urban cases originated in peri-urban resettlements. Another topic that I have been devoted my path is hydropower dams and health. I'm searching for the social, demographic, and environmental processes following the construction of major dams in the Brazilian Amazon. I found that health challenges emerged or worsened, notably dengue, tuberculosis, and rising suicide rates, particularly among the youth population. And 7 years post-construction, food insecurity affected nearly 60% of urban residents in Altamira, that is the most severely impacted city by the hydropower dam construction. Here in your right, you have a picture of Belo Monte Dam in the Brazilian Amazon. Another topic is energy justice, off-grid solutions. This project that I participate is focused on empowering off-grid communities with sustainable energy technologies. we were able to demonstrate that solar and hybrid systems can significantly enhance the quality of life of marginalized population lacking electricity access. So in your left, you have the standard of houses in these off-grid communities, especially the wooden walls one. In the middle, you have the generator that is fueled by diesel, so this is very pollutant. And in your right, you have a prototype of the technology that we are developing with the communities that is based on a hydrokinetic turbine that is placed within the river, so it generates energy without interrupting the flow of the boats or of the fish. And it can be merged with a solar system production. And it's working, and this is published by our team in PNAS. We are now implementing the technologies and doing the assessment. My work in the project is to analyze the community before and after project implementation to understand the impact that it can have, not only in terms of quality of life, but especially in terms of natality, fertility, and migration, mobility of the population, and the health issues too. Energy changed the life of people. So in terms of methodological challenges, I have been working with mixed methods approach. So it integrates qualitative and quantitative research, allowing for comprehensive insights. And by combining statistical analysis with community narratives, this method reveals nuanced understandings of population environment dynamics that purely quantitative studies may overlook. In addition to the secondary data that, of course, we utilize, we need more information. We need more data. So in this case, we apply cohort studies and surveys. Cohort studies track a group of individuals over time, revealing patterns and trends in population health. And surveys complement this by gathering broad data from diverse populations, enabling the identification of correlations between environmental factors and health outcomes. Here we have two publications. One of them is based in one of the cohort that we have. This is specifically about malaria in the Brazilian Amazon. And in the bottom, you have another paper. This is specifically based on a survey that we applied in Altamira urban area to get population perception on the social and environmental impacts of Belo Monte hydropower dam. So some final thoughts and appreciation. As you could see in my presentation, the interdisciplinary approach is key in my perspective. It enriches demography by integrating insights from environmental science and public health. This collaboration fosters research and addresses complex interlinkages between health, environment, and energy, pushing the boundaries of traditional demographic studies. Finally, I could not be here without many people and many institutions, so I'd like to highlight a few of them. So my mentors for life, Roberto do Carmo, who was my advisor during undergrad, master's, and PhD at Unicamp, is my PhD co-advisor, Marcelo Urbano and Marcia Castro, my first postdoc supervisors at University of São Paulo, as well as Emilio Moran, my second postdoc supervisor at Unicamp. So in their honor and to all my professors and role models, I express my deepest gratitude. So in addition, thank you very much to Unicamp, the NAPO, the Population Studies Center, Elza Bercó, the Institute of Philosophy and Human Science, the Department of Demography, and the graduate program in demography, to all the funders that made these projects possible, so FAPESP, CAPS, CNPq, NIH, NSF, and Mott Foundation, to all the students, researchers, and colleagues with whom I have been working with in my project, to my studies participants, and a special thanks to Moisés Gonzalez, Rosário Cárdenas, Lange Sanchez, Joyce Melo Vieira, Tirza Aidar, Maria Silvia Bassanese, who were the supporters of my application within ALAP for this award. And finally, thank you very much to the associations, the Brazilian Population Association, ABEP, the Latin American Population Association, ALAP, and to IUSSP for having this prize, acknowledging the participation of early careers in the development of demography field. And finally, the last but not least, to my family and friends who supported my career all this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Igor, for yet some more striking findings with regard to public health, with regard to impact analysis, and more. So thank you very much. And now, may I ask Albert to introduce Diego?
So yes, thank you very much. Let me start saying that we received several applications. Some of them were exceptionally good. So I would also like to congratulate those who didn't receive the award because they secretly know that they submitted. And I encourage people in the audience to keep submitting candidates to this award. But after reviewing all the candidates, we all agreed that Diego Alburez was an outstanding candidate because he stood out for having accumulated the largest number of achievements. He qualifies for the European award because, as you know, he's based in Europe at one of the leading research centers, the Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research, where he has one of the most prestigious positions in this center because he's an independent research leader, that he has his own funding and his own research group. I really like the combination of training programs and locations of Diego Alburez. He's an anthropologist from the Universidad del Valle in Guatemala, and he combines this degree in anthropology with a PhD in demography from the London School of Economics in the United Kingdom. What he's doing in the Max Planck, as I already said, he's leading a research group on kinship inequalities. He's studying the large implications of demographic trends for kinship dynamics. And as you know, these implications are significant given the longevity and the fertility revolution that is taking place all over the world. But he also investigates the implication for kinship of armed conflicts, wars, and health crises like COVID. As you all know, this is not a new field, but it's a challenging one, that it requires strong computational skills and a solid foundation in formal demography. So Diego is building on these past demographic contributions on the demography of kinship, but he's also making it more accessible to the rest of us, those who understand the kinship dynamics but struggle to compute them because it's such a complicated thing. So I guess Diego is making this field more open and understandable for all of us. He has published more than 25 articles in the top demographic journals and also in the top more general science journals. Let me name some titles like Demography, Population and Development Review, Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, or Science Advances. Many of his papers are first authored, but also co-authored, which shows his commitment to building scholarly communities and also to develop kinship within demographers, some sort of academic kinship ties. But I think he's really doing a great job in publishing with many scholars and junior and senior scholars. As you will have, I think you maybe had the opportunity to see, he's a regular but he attends the major population conference very often, but not only as a presenter, but also as a workshop organizer. And really, the committee appreciated his contribution to dissemination. On a personal level, I think I only have heard good things about Diego, both about his dedication to work, but also about his generosity toward junior and senior scholars. So I think we hope that this award it not only recognizes Diego's contribution until the present, but also serves as an encouragement to continue being who he is, who is a very standing scholar and excellent person. So thank you, Diego. Now the floor is yours, and you have 10 minutes to show us your research contributions to the model. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert, for this nice and overwhelming introduction. I really appreciate it. So, so I would like to start by thanking the award committee and the colleagues who supported my nomination for this award, and all the people, mentors, colleagues, students, friends who have been by my side in this over the years, and from whom I've learned so much. And so I want to keep it short. And so I will say something about myself, something about kinship demography, and something about demographic bereavement. I think Albert already gave a nice overview of this. So I guess the most important thing is that I am based now at the Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research, where I lead the Kinship Inequalities Research Group. And it's been such a privilege to be there. And I really have to show you my fantastic team. I think all of them are here also, so hi. So I've had the privilege over the last couple of years to work together with them in the joint sort of on specific projects, but with the bigger aim of fostering and promoting this field of the demography of kinship. And I'll tell you something about it now. So kinship demography is, as Albert mentioned, something that has been in the mind of demographers for a long time. But until recently, it's been kind of complicated to do because it can be technically challenging, or the data needs are quite demanding. And so what is kinship demography? I and some colleagues understand kinship demography as the study of family networks, their structure and dynamics from a demographic perspective, and using demographic methods. So I will show you one example that I hope can help clarify what we mean by this. And this comes from a study that was published a couple of years ago with Ivan Williams and Hal Caswell. And basically what we aim to do in this study is to provide the first big picture overview of how family structures are projected to change in the future, given what we know or what we assume about demographic trends and their future trajectories. And so this image that was produced by Scientific American exemplifies the direction of the changes that we anticipate. So on the left, this is the family of a woman who is 35 years old, let's say, in 1950, right? So here. And the concentric circles show the average number of living relatives that this woman has. So in the inner center, we have the older generations. So how many parents, aunts and uncles and grandparents does this person have? The second circle, we have the younger generation, so children and nibblings. And in the outer circle, we have the peer generation, so siblings and cousins. And as we move from the circles on the left to the circles on the right, so whereas this is 1950, here we have in the middle the present, let's say 2020, 2025. And then on the right-hand side, we have the projections towards the end of the century. And so it is clear that this circle on the right is much less crowded than the one on the left. So this is true for almost all of these concentric circles, except for the one in the middle, which is the older generations, right? So this shows that as we project that as we move forward in time, families will become smaller, but at the same time, people will have more ancestors. That is to say, more parents, more aunts and uncles, and more grandparents. And this has profound implications for care and the availability of informal support within families. So this is sort of an example of kinship demography. An example now of something that is also a component of kinship demography, in my view, which is bereavement. So I want you to think about bereavement as the state or fact of being bereaved or deprived of something or someone. So bereavement is a persistent state in the sense that you enter this state when you experience the death of a family member. So if my father dies, I am bereaved, and I can only exit this state if I die. So once bereaved, you will remain bereaved for the rest of your life. And this is different from grief, which is a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement. Right, so we can take this definition and apply it to, for example, the armed conflict in Colombia. So here we see this is like a similar idea where we have 4 pyramids, and the one on the left is 2018, so sort of the present, and the one on the right is our projections sort of approaching the end of the century, 2078. So this is the outer part of the pyramid is the total population of Colombia. So it's everyone who is alive in Colombia in 2018. The gray area is people who have never lost a member of their families to the armed conflict in Colombia, sort of considering almost the entire span of the conflict. Whereas the people, for example, who are in blue are those that have lost a member of their family in the distant family. So distant is sort of extended family. So I don't want to get into too many details, but basically the blue, the red, and the orange areas are people in the population who have lost at least one member of their family to the war at any point in time, at least one, right? Someone could have lost a cousin and the sibling and the parent, and they would be counted once in this population. So what we see here is that in 2018, there is a huge proportion of the population who can identify one member of their family that was killed in the war. So around 40%. And then we do demographic projections, and we see how this population of bereaved individuals will develop in the future, assuming that there are no more conflict deaths. And what we find is that even towards the end of the century, so 60-something years from now, there will still be a substantial proportion of the population that can identify a member of their family that was killed during their lifetime. So there is like this persistence of bereavement over time that is carried by demographic processes within families. So this is an example of a study of demographic bereavement. And as Albert mentioned, besides doing this research on sort of kinship bereavement and other topics, we've also been very busy creating tools that would allow other people to do this kind of analysis with relative ease. So here you can see 2 packages, 2 R packages, Demokin, which lets people do formal mathematical analysis of kinship, and on the right are SOCSIM, which is built on top of an existing simulator, SOCSIM, that was developed in Berkeley, but implemented in R to also lower a bit the entry cost for people who want to do simulations of kinship. And so apart from that, we, as myself, but also people in the group that I lead, have been promoting the study of kinship in conferences, organizing workshops. So here you can see an example in the last European Population Conference, where we brought together experts from different disciplines to talk about kinship demography and sort of its role and future as a field. And with that, I'm done, and thank you very much again for this recognition.
Thank you so much, Diego, for a really very interesting exposition on kinship demography and your perspectives. Well, now you've heard 5 fascinating presentations, and I think everyone must be very clear in their minds about why these 5 have been selected as the IUSSP Early Career Awardees. So now it's my great honor to make the Early Career Awards to each of you for your huge and multi-dimensional contribution for enhancing our field, not only substantively, but in terms of methodology, in terms of policy contributions, in terms of outreach, capacity building, and more. This award is really well deserved for all of you. So let me start by the award that I'm handing to you virtually with my warmest congratulations. Luca for Asia, together with the Asian Population Association. Congratulations, Luca. Then
thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Monica, our North American awardee, together with the Population Association of America.
Thank you.
Nurudeen, our Sub-Saharan African awardee, together with UAPS. Congratulations, Nurudeen.
Thank you.
Yeah, Igor, our Latin American awardee, together with ALAP. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Diego, our European awardee, together with EAPS.
Thank you.
So congratulations to all of you, and hope very much to have the opportunity to meet you at IPC and congratulate you in a more personal way. This is the most personal we can become at this point. And now the floor is open. I have a few people who've asked to speak. Roberto, is Roberto here?
Good morning. I'm Roberto do Carmo from University Estadual de Campinas. This talk was made jointly with Professor Luciana Alves, head of Department of Demography at Unicamp, who could not attend this ceremony. First of all, I would like to thank the IUSSP for the idea of this award. It's very important to recognize the work of the new generation of demographers who is facing a difficult moment for development of academic activities. About Igor's trajectory, I would like to remark several aspects. Since the first day I met Igor 18 years ago, caught my attention his preoccupation about academic values, the importance he gave to theoretical and methodological approach, the seriousness and involvement in all the research projects in which he participated. It's also one of his characteristics. He's a reference in this sense, knowing how to work in different research teams with different research responsibilities. The social and environmental commitment is also his trademark. He's always ready to question the social implications of the economic and social demographic process. As a teacher, he is also compromised with the best for his students, working very close to them. Beyond the competence and in research and teaching, Igor performed all the activities with a right sense of ethics. For all these reasons, we are very proud to have Igor with us. So congratulations, Igor, for this plan to deserve the award. The Latin America community of demographers hope that you keep going in your brightening way, inspiring the students and the future of research and teaching about population studies. Congratulations to all awardees for these remarkable contributions, scientific contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask Leontine Alkema?
Hi, everybody. I'm Leontine Alkema. I'm a professor in biostats at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and I very much enjoyed this this session. Congratulations to all recipients. It's great to learn not just about your impressive work, but also get inspired by the passion and the energy that you're bringing here. And so, okay, so now Monica is in the view too. So of course, a special shout out to Monica, really to congratulate you, especially on this well-deserved award. You're really, I would say, a statistical demography rock star doing amazing work in so many different areas. And that really stands out. You have this like real talent for interdisciplinary work, which I think is like, it's a common thread. But I really appreciate that you're doing this this technical work with formal demography at its core in this collaborative sense. So I'm always impressed by how quick you are to come up with ideas in this setting and carrying them out. And I would say you also have this talent for communicating technical content in particular. And also I'm impressed by how you deal with different kinds of challenges. So important, I think, also is to say that you're just a very kind and thoughtful and humble person as well. And so you're using your superpowers for the better. And I think that makes this award even more deserved than it already is. So congrats again, mate, and keep it going. And I look forward to seeing what you do next and what everybody else in this group does next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a number of speakers, so please may I ask everyone to keep their comments short. The next speaker is Jenny Trinitapoli. Jenny, are you here?
Yes, sorry. I know I've used Zoom before, but somehow I'm having problems this morning. Sorry for that. I want to make a quick comment for Luca. Luca, I've appreciated your work for so long, and there are a couple of things I'm not sure that you've had the opportunity to hear from me before. The first is I have this, personal, I feel a personal connection to you, even though we've never been at the same institution or directly collaborated, because I think you might be the same kind of like intellectual extrovert that I am. I really appreciate how you're so open with ideas, especially at conferences, and like just a really wonderful collaborator with many, many distinct groups of people, which I see as having like a really unique positive influence in our field. I also want to add two things about the conversations that we have when I have the opportunities to teach your work. One is that I always emphasize how the work that Luca does such a good job at being situated in context, not just grabbing the numbers and grabbing the data from a particular place, but regardless of whether it's a multi-country study or whether it's focused on just one location, really helping us understand the connections to other social processes that make the demographic processes so important and so visible. And finally, I think that this is a common feature of all the people working in this group, and it's very useful for many of us in the field. You all are doing so much to make your data and your analyses and the new methodological tools you're developing useful to others. I want to say how much I appreciate that, because I use these tools and these insights, and I love looking at your code on the GitHub. It helps me do better work. I also give my students sort of tips that they can find solutions to a lot of problems on the websites and the GitHubs of young laureates in the field. And so those are the things that, I wanted to share and congratulate all of you. And also thanks the IUSSP people for pulling this together. It's early in Chicago where I'm speaking from, and there's nothing nicer than hearing such cool presentations first thing on a Monday morning.
Thank you. Ursula Torrisi, are you here, Ursula?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so as a colleague really and an admirer of Diego's work, I'm very just pleased to celebrate his latest achievement. As Albert said, this is one of the many he has already received. And I've known Diego really and his research for quite some time, really since my early encounters with demography at the London School of Economics, where we both did our PhD. And I remember that Diego really back in the days stood up as a sort of a refreshing kind of different researcher in the department. He was this anthropology trained student with a passion for linguistics, many sort of supervisors, but also his own very self-directed, ambitious, and unusually clear research goal, really to document the atrocities of the 1982 genocide against the Maya Achi people and to quantify its long-term effects on the population. And I remember that I first met Diego when he was actually returning from fieldwork in the Rabinal region of Guatemala. And so as someone back in the days that was interested in how violence shapes family and demographic outcomes, really Diego's PhD work and research made really like a lasting impression on me. And I think on many others in the subfield that we now call conflict demography, and that I would say Diego has really helped shape before it really actually had a name. You've heard and probably read about all the methodological innovation that came out of his work back in the day, so I'm not going to go and expand much on that. But I think one of the common thread that also has emerged from others people comment is that really Diego brings huge humanity and passion for the work that he does. I've had good and remember great conversation with you, Diego, not just about data in theory, but also about what it means to do work on something as emotionally and ethically charged as genocide research. So for me, Diego is really the example of a well-rounded academic and intellectual who was able to really take complex and at times really painful matters, such as genocide, and studying them rigorously to generate demographic evidence that can speak across disciplines and audiences without really losing sight of the people that are behind the numbers. And so as also Albert said, since then, I think Diego's research has really been at the forefront of demographic methods and inquiry. He's now a leading voice in kinship demography, and he's really helping us to think about big picture questions, but also how to think about how all these changes that we're observing due to conflict and violence are going to be shaping future population dynamics. I also want to just add on what Jenny just said. As a new sort of assistant professor myself, I am so thankful for all the resources and opportunities and data and codes that all of you have put together in the recent past. And all the behalf of all conflict demographers, as well as junior demographers who look for sources of inspiration. I really want to thank you, Diego, for the contributions to the field, for helping shape my own thinking when I was starting this job and this research, and from bringing attention to places and experiences that might have otherwise really remained neglected. And of course, I want to thank you as well, as I said, Monica, Nurudeen, Igor, and my dear friend Luca for all the work and for being equal sources of inspiration to you all. And I look forward to be able to say this in person, hopefully, in Brisbane.
Thank you so much. And now the last on my list is Na Dodu. Hi, Na. Are you there? Yes?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I see we have just 1 minute left in our meeting, so I'll be short and sweet to the point. Just to say, I've been really fascinated by all of the wonderful work and presentations that we've heard today. It shows there's a lot of hope for our field. I elected to speak for Nurudeen. So let me speak very quickly about him. So Nurudeen tells me that the first day he stepped into a demography place was RIPS at the University of Ghana. I was one of the first people he spoke to. I had no idea. He told me this years after. But I'm very proud of what you've become, Nurudeen, whom you've grown up to be. I'm really proud of your choice to do so much policy work within Africa. It's a difficult field, and keep it up. And keep it up, everybody. Congratulations. I am truly inspired by you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Na. So now I've come to the bottom of my list. If there are any more people who would like to speak, do you see any?
No.
No. Okay, then it's my very pleasant duty now to close this meeting with, I think, our warmest congratulations to all the awardees for their brilliant careers. We hope to see much more and read much more from each of them in the years to come. And I feel demography is safe with the kinds of awardees that we have just heard. So congratulations, thank you, and see you at IPC. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See you in Brisbane.